and I had to record something. I'm trying a whole new thing. So this is the new trailer. And now I have workspace, which is great. And I just had to start a new update because everything's been going in the direction that I saw it going when it comes to dead air. And it's been a lot of fun. But then, of course, I knew I was going to get derailed. I did. I got derailed, as usual. I'm back in California, Temecula, right now, taking care of my mom business. She had a fall in her assisted living place and gashed her head. It became very important to get my mom moved out of there. And so we did. So I was actually going to be, okay, so with the trailer, this is a 33-foot Grand Design Reflection. And it's 2021, so it's a year older than my other trailer was, but it needs to have solar installed so I can do the boondocking. So I'd already purchased all the equipment, found the guy to do it. He's out in Quartzsite, a friend of a friend. I'd already had that arranged to go do that. So I was going to leave the ranch in Mesa and go to Quartzsite and spend a couple of weeks out there in Quartzsite, getting the solar installed, get adjusted to boondocking with this new trailer while I was with people who knew what they were doing. It's always a bonus. And then I was going to go to California and spend a month. But just as this is happening, it's like I can't even express how just odd it is because I launched the Dead Air on Kindle and was super excited about how that was going to go. And the very next day, I get this call about my mom having a fall, and that sets into motion all of the management of mom's care. The very next morning, I hitched up the trailer and made all these arrangements to come back to California. So my whole go get these solar installed and everything was had to be rescheduled and postponed. So here I am at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And so I spent the all day Wednesday getting here. First time pulling the fifth wheel that far. It's a dream. I love that my truck has a bigger gas tank, so I didn't even have to stop for gas. I stopped at a rest stop so Kismet and I could stretch our legs and go potty, but that was it. So that's a bonus. And I'm sure there's going to be more on that with the RV travel coming about the benefits of that and the fifth wheel and getting here to the campground. It was the first time I'd had to back into a space, and thankfully the campground manager gave me a hand, which was nice. So it began the whole journey of was that we had to get approvals to get mom moved, and then we have to go and physically pack her stuff. And she couldn't go with us to go do that. She's injured, she's sore, she's in a walker, and the space isn't big enough to have her there. So my son and I are having to make some significant decisions on her behalf. And it's physically, mentally, emotionally taxing. And meanwhile, I've got new reviews coming in for Dead Air that are all positive, 5-star reviews. I had a couple of 3 stars, but I looked at the reviews and I'm like, okay, whatever, that's your opinion. I gotcha. And then people are downloading the book and they're responding to the social media posts, and I've vanished now. I've vanished because my focus is on my mom and it's not on my book, which it's been on my book for quite a while as we prepare the launch. Mom is okay. Yeah, she had to get some staples and the gash was in the top of her head, and it was a good thing she wasn't on the blood thinners at the time, or she might have bled out. In fact, the hospice nurse was seriously concerned, and actually, to tell you the truth, there's an APS case has been filed about this place. So happy to have her out of that kind of environment. Now she's in a residential home, which actually is around the corner from my granddaughter's school. It just happened to be that way. So we didn't get her settled in. I'm going back today. So even though it's a Saturday, my body needs a rest. So I get the morning off. But poor Kismet, yesterday, the last 2 days since we've been here, I've had to be doing this moving process, and everything is far away. You know, where my campground is, it's a good 30 minutes from where my son and my mom is, my son and the caregiver for a couple of nights because we had nowhere else to take her after the ER. And 'cause we weren't going to send her back to the facility that just neglected her while she's bleeding from the head for 6 hours. So she went back to my son and caregiver's home and stayed there for a couple of days. And so the timing of getting there and the drive here and then the getting there and then going out to the facility and starting to pack stuff up and then lifting heavy furniture and moving things and then the back and forth. I mean, if you ever moved, it's exhausting. And we're dealing with somebody else's belongings. It's not ours. So we're having to, what do we keep this or we toss this? And the room is small, the space is smaller, so we had to condense. And it's been a struggle. And then the poor dog, I'm looking over at him right now. The poor dog, he had to stay in the trailer. I couldn't deal with him. Make sure I walk him a couple times and he's done all of his business and gotten everything out of his system so he can be holed up in the trailer for. I don't think I've ever left him longer than 6 hours. And at that time he was still a pup and he's right here and he was in a crate. So it wasn't really, he had water and everything. I wasn't nervous about anything bad happening in the trailer, but now he's not in a crate anymore. He's already had a little episode about chewing a little hole in the floor. So I was nervous that by my dog being left alone for so long, something bad might happen and my trailer might get some damage. But yesterday when I got back, he was just really happy to see me and he hadn't done anything. In fact, he hasn't eaten or drinking anything either. So I think he's almost channeling my emotions because yeah, eating and sleeping is sparse. But I am excited about what's coming. Mom is in a safe place now. It seems like a really good environment. It's a residence. It's just a 4 bedroom house. She's got her own room, maybe a shared bathroom, but right now she's using it on her own. And so last night was her first night. I'll go back today with her photo albums and my nieces, hopefully, and to help her settle in a little bit more. And then Sunday, I got to nap. I got to rest my body. But the business still keeps going. So Dead Air is released and people are reading it. And I am how do you really put into words the feeling of satisfaction that your peers are really enjoying something you wrote? My peers would be radio people and they are loving the novel and I almost want to cry honest really because I'm so thrilled about it because this book is a love story or a love letter to the broadcast radio industry and I've spent so much time in there. I had a couple of when I was out promoting early and I was working on the launch team. I went to this event for I think it's like LA Radio Memories. And so it's an old retired group of radio people in Los Angeles. And I used to take my dad every year for years to these reunions, LA Radio Reunion, that's what it is. I would take him and he would love it. And he'd ask me to take him. Sometimes I thought he wanted me to go just because I would drive and then we could go in the fast lane, the carpool lane. He needed an extra body in the car and he wanted a driver. That's okay. But in December, they were having one and I was invited. So I went and it happened to be my dad's birthday. So it was appropriate. So I was enjoying conversations with people, and I can't even remember exactly which person it was. And I had gotten them to take pictures with the Dead Air greeting card. So if you've been on social media, you've probably seen pictures of some of the people that were on my Radio Insider team. And we were talking about Charlie Tuna, who was a Los Angeles radio personality for I don't know. I don't even know how long, 40 years, 50 years. He was at every station and he had a really great reputation. He was great on the air. And I'd only really met him in person a few times. A couple of interactions I'd had with him was I had written an article that ended up in, I don't remember which radio trade it was in. And I had sent it around to people through LinkedIn. And he responded and said something about that the article really demonstrated my pedigree in radio. And I never really put that component together that because of my dad's background, I also have some sort of a pedigree after being in the business as long as I have. I've just always I'm just working with my dad. This is my dad. And we would go, when Dad and I would go to do inspections, we would sit around a conference table with some of the staff at a radio or television station, and they would ask Dad to tell about working in Los Angeles and stories and this and that. And they would love the stories. And they were stories that I'd heard my whole life and familiar with, but knew that radio people really enjoy them. And if you want to see them, they're on a YouTube playlist right here on my channel. But anyway, back at this LA radio reunion, we're sitting and we're talking about Charlie Tuna and how nice he was. And I recalled a story of when Dad and I were working with the Clear Channel, which had just bought up a whole bunch of radio stations. So this is way, way back when in the beginning. And we were getting a tour of the Los Angeles facility that they had just combined all of their 8 radio stations that had been in 3 different locations. They just created a new plant and had moved them all in. And Dad and I were brought in to help organize their legal stuff, the public files. And Charlie Tuna was in the program director's office when we came by and we were doing the tour, and Dad and Charlie were just good old friends because Dad worked with Charlie at KHJ for however long. When Dad was an engineer and obviously and Charlie was a radio personality. They worked at Boss Radio together at this event. So this guy and I, we were conversing about our interactions with Charlie Tuna. Just that was part of the conversation. And he says, we are the heirs of Boss Radio. And that really struck me because, yeah, who are my influences? What's my influence in broadcast? My influence was my father and my brother. My father actually worked there for the launch of Boss Radio. And my brother, who was a young, impressionable teenager in Los Angeles, listening to Boss Radio and going to the radio station with his dad, he was influenced by those guys. So that way, when we put our radio station on the air, who trained me? The Boss Radio guys. So when this guy said, we are the heirs of Boss Radio, it really struck me as, wow, yeah, we could carry on that legacy and not live in the past of what made radio great, but realize that we have the ability to keep it going and to reinvent or just revitalize. My word for the year of 2025 is innovate. So when I was writing this novel, I didn't really have it in mind about a Boss Radio connection, but I am thrilled about the whole idea of it being a love letter to the broadcast industry. It's look, if the industry would innovate and reinvent itself to like the modern days, yeah, we've got social media and we've got digital platforms, we've got all of these things that are basically taking a slice of the pie away from as the audience goes. But what worked before? And that goes with anybody in any field, in your life, your personal life, your family life. What was working before? And why don't you take those tools out of your toolbox and start utilizing them again? I have this with my psychotherapy clients often. I utilize cognitive behavioral therapy, so I demonstrate and provide them resources and tools to use CBT. I'm also a grief specialist, so I do a lot of grief and heart math. I'm certified in the heart math technique, which is a bit of a biofeedback. I can explain that later. But often this happens with everybody is that you get yourself on a trajectory and you're going really well, you're doing good, but then you forget the tools that you were using that got you to that point in the first place. And it doesn't mean that you've slid back. It just means that you've just you veered off again and you went in a different direction. Maybe you get consumed with the news and it takes you on the downward spiral of anxiety and depression. What was working for you before? I told you to go on a news diet, right? Didn't I? That's what I'm telling my clients. So are you consuming more news again? Okay, just turn it off. That's the answer. Turn it off. Don't be, if you turn, this is what I learned being out in the wilderness so much, and you're not connected to the world in such a way, but you're out in nature and you're peaceful and you slow yourself down. That was life changing for me. And it still continues to be life changing. So getting back to dead air and my mom and this whole experience of being completely disrupted and derailed with my original plans, we're getting back on track. We handled the emergency and we got it done. And yes, it's taken this time to come back here, the expense of it, the emotions of it, the concerns for my mom and getting her safe. I'm sure it's not over as far as the neglect and stuff. But I don't think it'll have much to do with me. There's already been a file case or a file made open but she's okay now and she's safe now. And that's why I'm here in the dark at this hour of the morning because I'm having a hard time sleeping. My brain is just, my mind won't stop. My body is exhausted and it wants to rest. but my brain won't stop. So I'm only getting a few hours of sleep a night at this point. And I'm sure that when I get to quartzite with all the peace and quiet and the responsibility will have been like taken care of, I'll be able to rest. So I'm like, oh, I will then. But today I needed to do this update because I am going to start recording and documenting what's going on again. And I thought I would try this new way of doing it with the Zoom and see how it goes with my microphone if the quality is better. So I just figured just keep talking and see what happens, and I'll edit later. That is it for me. I gotta when the sun rises, I need to take my dog out. Let's see. Ooh, sun is coming up. Want to save you? All right. Can't really see it with the screen and everything. There's not really much of a view, but I'm at a nice, cute little campground that becomes home base when I'm here in Temecula. So that is it for me for this update. More from Kelly and Kismet and our adventures to come. See you later.